Hello and welcome to the Engerati studio here at Itron Utility Week in Orlando. I'm joined now by Janet Schijns. Janet, first of all, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And I'm really looking forward to this because, you're Vice President of Global Channels at Verizon, but we are taking a bit of a segue and we're not really going to be talking too much about tech and so on.
Nope.
But we are going to be talking about women in energy and how we can help as a community make some of that possible and enable women to come into the utility sector and energy. So that sets us up. And Janet, while you're here, in your own words, where do you see the problem around getting women in energy? And I know that's a big ask, so we'll break it down about in your commentary about how this needs to be fixed and some of the outputs of that as well.
So it's a big problem. You only have to attend an amazing event like the Itron event to see the problem. There's less women in this audience than there is in a technology conference audience, which is already at record low. In fact, women are actually declining in both of those industries, and that's an issue. So what I like to start with here to talk about is, why does it matter? Why do women need to be in the energy industry? Well, they're more than 50% of consumers, they're more than 60% of purchasing, they're more than 70% of the household decisions around things like smart homes and connected energy, and yet they're not represented in the industry. And what happens, that means is that the firms that are smart enough to get women at the table innovate faster, provide better solutions, more diverse solutions, and win. And their competitors sit back thinking it's the IoT solution they did, or the technology, and it's not. It's the customer experience that they design that makes the difference.
And one of the examples of that, I remember doing an interview in Europe with head of innovation at RWE, who happens to be a woman as well, but we're talking about the subject, and she made a very great point. She was like going, well, I sit around a table and I've got all these engineers saying that I can turn on my washing machine in the middle of the night and so on, but I have actually run a house, and I know how that is just not doable.
Right.
Not if my children want to
go to camp in the morning,
or whatever. So can you sort of bring some of the opportunities to life a little bit more? I mean, how you would see it happen? I know some of it might be theoretical, but it'd be quite nice to hear from you, some of your vision on it as well.
Sure, I think there's two things. So the first thing, obviously, everybody talks about, it's getting more girls into the STEMs, right? Early on, getting women excited about engineering, technology, math, and marketing and sales around energy solutions, right? Getting people to want a career when they're younger in this industry and in the sciences and engineering. But a lot of people are working on that, and what they've ignored is the fact that we are doing as an industry a very poor job of keeping women in these more industrial industries. The turnover rate for women is almost 3x that of men, particularly in leadership positions. So we have to find a way to make those women feel like they belong, because I love the story that you just told, but being the only woman at a table gets very lonesome. And after a time, you go to find a tribe that you're gonna belong with. And so if there's not other tribe members in your industry, and if people don't do a good job making sure that you have a voice, it's super easy to leave. Because women are in demand everywhere, in every industry, and every firm is now a technology industry. So you can go work in fashion or cosmetics or automobiles or anything you want, and it's still around the same core things around technology and innovation.
So do you think, I got to declare a bias here as well. I've got a 9-year-old daughter, right? So I'm kind of looking at all of this as well. You try and guide your children in a certain area, sure. and you're like going, well, listen, this maths and science stuff isn't going to go away. As much as you can have this conversation with a 9-year-old, right? You've got to pay attention to it. But do you not think, from a society point of view as well, there's so much noise for all the other things, like, you get on The Voice and then suddenly you make $1 million if you can sing halfway decent and all that sort of stuff. Do we not need to sort of engage that new constituency in a different way? I mean, my kids are on apps and things like that. You can't stop it. but there's very little engagement around the sort of science side of things and so on. I mean, how do you see that?
Well, it's not new, right? Everybody's kids always, I wanted to be a fireman, or, I guess you would say fire girl. When I was a kid, everybody had a dream or a desire, but at one point in time, you realize you also have to make money. And so what we see is this kind of mobile cocoon that girls are in is being influenced too much by specific brands and shows to be softer around the arts. So instead of pointing out that The Voice actually uses very deep analytics and intelligence that's all machine driven, that their mobile app design and their user interfaces were all done by scientists, and that in fact, if you could code a little bit, you could figure out what's going to be most popular and know what song to use when you audition to get a better feedback from the audience and the voters. They don't talk about that. They don't show that science and that math. And that's critical. We need to show these young girls that all the cool stuff that they think is really amazing actually happens somewhere in the sciences and maths and engineering, not on the stage.
And that's the genesis, that's the bedrock that you're just looking at the tip of the iceberg.
That's right.
So if we drive it back to the utility sector,
sure.
in specific, let's roll back to why we're here. We're at Itron Utility Week. There's the clue. What does, in your opinion, the utility sector need to do to get sort of more engagement at the ground up? Because we were talking off air, there are a lot of spectrums. There's a lot of jobs in the utility, all the way from the field to being the distribution engineer and so on. So how do we bring that to bear, in your view?
So I'm going to start somewhere that may seem unnatural, which is you've got to bring women leaders into this industry. You're going to have to recruit them from other industries who are passionate about this topic,
so
who want women to come in and be successful. Because a girl sitting in the audience, and we just, at the keynote, we had an amazing local choir that sang, and a lot of young women in that audience. And I was the only female that was on the stage. So for them, if I don't resonate with them as somebody who they would aspire to be, that inspires them, they're not going to want to join that business. Why do they want to, be a singer or be in cosmetics or, be in fashion?
Do you personally feel that pressure?
I do. I feel the pressure to inspire the next generation to want to join this industry, and they should. We make more money. We have more flexibility and freedom, and we're changing the world. Think about the energy industry and what it's doing. The ozone hole is now closing. Now look, you don't hear about that because it's not bad news, and the media likes to talk about bad news.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's good news that actually the things that this industry is doing are recreating, redefining the world and saving the world. And what girl wouldn't want to be part of that? I know as a grown woman, I want to be part of that. But on top of that, you can make more money and have more influence as a female in this industry.
But that's a whole change in conversation as well. That's also changing the projection of the utility sector from being a project management entity to being a change management entity.
And a talent entity, a place where the talent goes. When you think back 20 or 30 years ago, the top scientific minds, male or female, used to apply to NASA, used to apply to the energy industry. Now they apply to a tech company, and it's all around the culture. It's around that culture. So if you inspire those minds to come to the energy industry, they will.
But isn't the energy industry a tech industry? But so are the utilities doing a really bad job of saying, hey, we're a tech industry?
Every industry is a tech industry. For the first time this year in the Fortune 500, more than 90% of the companies said the industry they were in and their second industry was technology. Everybody's a tech industry, and the energy industry is late to this. They need to brand themselves as a cool, geeky place that's saving lives, creating new worlds, and something you want to join and be part of and be included in, or they're going to fall farther behind. And they are already desperately behind in the race to this talent.
So do you think there's a fundamental DNA about how this industry talks to millennials? I mean, when we were talking off air, you were talking about Verizon, and we'll come to Verizon in a second, about the way, and I remember being a part of that shift with telecoms and consumer companies embracing social, and you have a social war room. Sounds very aggressive, but you've got 50 people in there who are monitoring everything. I wouldn't see that in here, in this industry, though. So, what's your advice about how to engage with the? I kind of don't like the word millennials, but it is what it is. So, that constituency.
It's always a problem when you broad brush a generation, right? You hear it, millennials are selfish, millennials are self-centered. No, they're not. They're a new generation, right? Baby boomers are this, Gen X is that. So what I see with the millennials is they want to communicate in the way they choose. And they have choices. And they've learned from the biggest brands like Verizon that they can tweet, DM, post something on Facebook, and have an honest dialogue with the brand. And in fact, they've learned that they complete your brand. Now you turn to the energy industry, and in fact, in my keynote, I asked for a show of hands of who had more than 1,000 Twitter followers, and it was just me and Robert Swan. Now, he went to the South and the North Pole, so I'm sure he should have Twitter followers. But I find that what happens is the further disconnected you get from the reality that this next generation wants intimate conversations and a relationship, and the further you get away from social media, the less likely you are to not only attract the best talent, but also the customers.
And it's also one of those things that's less understood, is that noise is the start of the filter to attract people. It's
right.
almost like too many people, and maybe it's that engineering mindset as well, where you're like, well, why would I do this? I can't have a hard number next to it. It's just a leap of faith, isn't it?
That's correct.
Which is what Verizon did as well. When you built that whole thing up.
And whether you're talking employees or customers, you have to engage in that dialogue to get people to want to be part of your brand. And I think this is the salient point that maybe the industry needs to work more on. Is it's not noise. It's not some kind of endless dialogue of tweeting, I'm sitting on the couch, I'm still sitting on the couch. It's a real conversation that you learn about your customers and what employees want. There's an honesty there that helps you to innovate and helps you to move ahead that we have to embrace.
So let's go to Verizon now.
Sure.
And let's see what can be learned about it as well. Because one of my notions is that we can't just rely on governments to fix this, and let's not go into a political debate right now, but
on camera.
Listen, it's no less crazy in Britain, so that's all I'm going to say. But large corporates are becoming the new leaders. You look at the Googles and the Facebooks of this world, and companies like Verizon that have got this big spread and this big noise. What is Verizon doing? Because you must be looking at this as well. You can't very well say and preach and then not walk the walk yourself. So how is Verizon walking the walk?
So I think it comes down to two constituencies, consumers and businesses, and they have different needs and different approaches. So I'll talk first a little bit about externally, and then I want to talk about what we're doing in our foundation as well. So externally, we're making sure that we're available, we're transparent, and we're simple to work with. And that matters both to consumers and to businesses. And simple to work with is a major key here for millennials and the digital transformation. The harder you are to engage with, the harder it is to understand what you want me to do with your product, the less likely I am to engage. So we've redefined our processes, we've redefined how we work as teams, we've redefined even our workspaces so that they actually enable that collaboration and that culture that you want to have as a company.
Can I dig a bit deeper in that?
Sure can.
Because you say these words and they sound simple, but what does a business need to do? I mean, where does the fundamental change come from?
Yep.
Because a lot of people say it has to come from the top, otherwise none of this works. But also more importantly, can you just bring to life some of the pain as well? Because it's not all good, right?
No, it's hard. It's hard work.
The journey's tough.
It's hard work, and I'll start by saying, listen, culture. Everybody knows the saying. Culture, can eat strategy for lunch, but in a digital world, it even has room for dessert. It's a cultural transformation. We're not talking hoodie wearing, free food, flexible work hours. You're talking about the culture to say, I'm okay if we fail often, as long as it's early. I'm okay if we bring in talents that are unnatural to our business, that aren't from our industry, that teach us a different perspective, that show us a different way. And I'm okay if we talk about customer experience, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and figure out a way to fix it. But I'm not okay with a hierarchical organization. I'm not okay with continually paying more to hire the same people that move around the spoke of the industry. And I'm not okay in staying with age, technological innovations and infrastructures. I have to move forward. And so that's the first set.
Culture.
It's a very open, and it's an honest culture.
Yeah.
And it comes at a cost, because many of the very people that put those things in place are still there. And you have to have the mindset that says, I don't care what we put in place. Some of the past is sacred and we must protect it, but the future is an open book. So that's the first thing you really have to do, is get that mindset.
So you're moving from a very traditional, when you read management books from 15 years ago, command and control thing, right? You've got to get your command and control structure right, because when you say this, everything needs to happen to much more open, and have you guys done any measurement about how that transition has actually enabled you to win?
Yes. So we actually have an employee pulse survey that we started, as well as some innovation analysis. And one of the things we did, which I think is great in the enterprise space, so I'll talk about it, is we launched a company-wide hackathon. So a growth hackathon, thousands and thousands of people, hundreds and hundreds of teams, and said, tell us the problem and how you would fix it. 48 hours, very little sleep. I myself slept at my desk for about 45 minutes. And we came up with hundreds of solutions to the problems that are plaguing our customers and plaguing our business, and are already coding those solutions and putting them out in the market and seeing an immediate impact on our Net Promoter Score, which is how we measure how our customers feel about us.
When you say immediate impact, can you put some numbers to it? Or?
Think about, I'll use a very simple one. We had a problem with ordering where people felt that if they wanted to change an order slightly, it took a lot of work to change that order slightly, multiple calls, multiple discussions, multiple new pieces of paperwork. We had a group of people that came together in this hackathon. In 48 hours, they came up with a solution. In 72 hours, they programmed it into the system. The next week, we actually put it out there, have over 1,700 customers now that have used that solution to make minor changes, and the feedback has been unbelievable. And it costs very little, but it inspired the team to do it fast and do it real.
And so let's get back to the other side of the question. What's Verizon doing to attract women into the organization at almost all levels? So you made the point that you need the leaders there.
You do.
And that's almost like, if you take a solar system analogy, that's the gravitational pull.
That's right.
But you still need to enable that welcoming environment all the way through. Yeah. So what are you guys doing for that?
So there's a supply chain problem throughout every industry for women, period. There is a supply chain problem. So you have to look at it at every level of the supply chain. So what we did is we focused our Verizon Foundation 100% on STEM, on education, on getting diverse and female talent into the pool early, get them in the right classes, get them the right experience, teach them how to program a mobile app in 6 weeks during the summer, so that when they graduate, they want to be in the industry. Second, as we bring female leaders in, we have a group called WAVE. It's the Women at Verizon. I'm actually on the board, and we actually enclose these females into a different set of circumstances. We've launched unconscious bias training throughout the entire company, teaching people that you have an unconscious bias, whether you want to or not, whether it's good or bad, you have an unconscious bias about women. And how do you make sure that you don't act on that and that you actually give women an opportunity? And then finally, I really think that what Verizon is doing that's key is enabling senior leaders like myself to have these dialogues, to have this conversation, and to put my foot down and say, I am not willing for women to keep leaving the industry, to keep not being in leadership positions, and I'm going to help them get there. And so I personally mentor, and I actually have a vlog and a YouTube channel where I mentor women within Verizon and the industry and talk about the challenges, the struggles, and how we can all help. And I'm happy to say have hundreds of thousands of people that participate in that monthly by watching, viewing, commenting, and engaging.
So all of this is pretty fundamental. I mean, if you look at everything you've said, I mean, there seems to be a real dedication and a push. Let's circle all the way back to utilities. Are you seeing any utility with this type of commitment? They might not be
Absolutely.
there yet,
Absolutely.
but what's the commitment landscape
So
look
we're
like?
seeing it, and that's why I'm here at the Itron event, right? They are very committed to diversifying and to making sure people have the conversations. Duke Energy has done some phenomenal things as well. I would say they are the cream at the crop of the top. But
What have they done?
so they've really invested in attracting females in STEM and education. They've launched some great local programs in the markets where they are to encourage girls to come in and see what they do and have a relationship with the company. So I think that's a really strong thing to do. I would say I'm waiting to see which utility companies are going to go steal some top talent. Transparently, that's what they need to do, that have a following, that are engaged, that are going to be out there and make the play, because it's very clear. I can name a number of studies that show that companies with a diverse culture and a diverse leadership team and a diverse board perform better than those without. So I think there's going to be a moment here, probably in 2017, where a couple of these firms wake up, realize that they are now the biggest technology energy providers as opposed to energy providers, and make the play to steal some folks from the tech industry. Now look, there's not enough women to go around, so the race is going to go to the swift and the bold.
Yeah, and look, with all the commentary we've seen that there's more and more tech piling in, and sort of as we're coming to the end of our time here as well, I've just got one question,
Sure.
which will probably maybe help us bring it all together. What do you think will be the effect of the new generation coming into this energy sector? So, you know, when we were talking off air, I mentioned, and it was one of those little nuggets for me to pick up, is we did an interview yesterday, and the person that I was interviewing had written a blog from South by Southwest. Now that in itself isn't amazing, but what was interesting is that at that tribe, for the first time ever, there was a dedicated stream towards energy. Now, I find that input amazing, that suddenly this tribe is now talking about it, and we all know what the South by South, well, most of us know what
Yes.
the South by Southwest is. How do you see that?
So listen, the culture is shifting in the nation. I'll keep my comments to the US. And it's more around living, working, and playing in a purposeful way. These next generation millennials, if I paint them with a broad brush, want to live in a different way and have choices. And they're going to make those choices. And one of those choices is they care about energy. They care about the environment. They believe what they were taught in school, that there's a real risk, and they want to be part of the solution. So the conversation is starting there. But I would tell you, and I always ask this question, 10 years ago, if I told you you were going to use your mobile device to call a stranger to pick you up, you would have scoffed at me. And yet Uber is now the biggest stranger ride-sharing application in the world. If I told you you were going to sleep at a stranger's house rather than a branded hotel, you would have scoffed at me. And yet Airbnb, changing the way we travel. And that's what's coming to this industry. A dedicated group of smart young people is going to find a way to redraw the lines. Regulations aside, history aside, they will redraw the lines. And those lines will be drawn in what matters to them: energy conservation, a relationship with their energy and their local community. They're going to make change. The issue is, will this industry listen and read that blog and go to South by Southwest? I think they will, and have that spirited discussion that lets us draw a new line for the utilities industry overall.
And Janet, I think on that eloquent note, that's a good place to leave it. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure
Thank
talking
you.
to you.